There is something you are not saying, something that lives in your throat like a stone you cannot swallow and cannot spit out, something that sits heavy on your chest every time you open your mouth to speak, and then close it again without letting the words escape. Something that keeps you awake at 3 a.m, rehearsing conversations you will never have, arguments you will never make, truths you will never tell. You have been silent for so long that you have convinced yourself the silence is who you are, that keeping quiet is being kind, that swallowing your words is being mature, that protecting others from what you really think, really feel, really need is what love looks like. But it is not love. It is slow death. And the silence you keep is not protecting anyone. It is killing you. Killing the person you actually are beneath the performance of who you think you should be. Carl Jung discovered something that changes everything about how we understand psychological health and authentic living. He found that what we refuse to express does not disappear. It does not dissolve into nothing just because we keep it locked inside. It goes into the body, into the shadow, into the unconscious where it festers, creating symptoms we cannot explain, depression we cannot trace to a cause, anxiety that seems to come from nowhere, rage that erupts over small things because the big things were never addressed, physical illness that has no medical explanation because the body is screaming what the voice refused to say. Jung called this the return of the repressed. What you silence in consciousness will find another way to speak, through your body, through your relationships, through the life you keep destroying without understanding why. And it will keep speaking, louder and more destructively, until you finally give it the voice it has been demanding all along. The silence you keep is not one silence. It is many, each one killing a different part of who you really are. The silence of truth, where you do not say what you actually think because you are terrified of conflict, rejection, or being seen as difficult. The silence of pain, where you do not express what hurts because you were taught that vulnerability is weakness and complaining is burdensome. The silence of boundaries, where you do not say no, do not speak up when violated, do not defend yourself because you learned that your needs do not matter as much as other people's comfort. And the silence of desire, where you do not ask for what you want, do not pursue what calls to you, do not claim what you need, because somewhere along the way you internalize the belief that wanting anything for yourself is selfish, shameful, or destined for disappointment. These silences are not random. They were installed deliberately through childhood conditioning, trauma, or cultural messaging that taught you that certain truths cannot be spoken, that certain feelings are unacceptable, that certain needs make you a burden, that certain desires make you wrong. So you learned to silence yourself, and at first it worked. The silence kept you safe, kept you loved, kept you connected to people who could not handle your full truth. But what worked then is destroying you now, because the silence that once protected you has become the prison that suffocates you. And every day you continue to keep it. Every moment you swallow words that need to be said. Every time you perform agreement when you disagree, or fake contentment when you are suffering, you are not preserving peace. You are killing authenticity. You are murdering the person you actually are in favor of the person you think others need you to be. And that person, the silent, accommodating, self-betraying version, is not you. It is a ghost, and you are haunting your own life. Today you are going to see the 4 silences that are killing you. The silence of truth, where you hide what you really think. The silence of pain, where you hide what you really feel. The silence of boundaries, where you hide what you really need, and the silence of desire, where you hide what you really want. Look at these 4 silences, not with shame, not with judgment, but with the radical honesty required to see clearly what you have been doing to yourself in the name of keeping the peace, being liked, or protecting others from your reality. Because one of these silences, maybe all of them, is the reason you feel like you are dying inside while performing life on the outside. Jung taught that the unlived life, the unexpressed truth, the unspoken word, these are not small things. They are the difference between existing and living, between surviving and thriving, between being a ghost and being fully, courageously, devastatingly alive. Make your choice. Which silence is killing you? And then stay with me, because what you are about to discover will not give you permission to stay silent. It will show you why breaking the silence is the only path to reclaiming who you really are. Why speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes, is not optional for psychological health. Why the words you keep swallowing are the ones you most need to say. And why the silence you keep, no matter how noble the intention, is the slow death of your soul. The person you could be is suffocating under the weight of everything you refuse to say. And it is time to finally, courageously let that person breathe. If your soul recognized the silence of truth, the pattern where you cannot say what you actually think, where you perform agreement when you disagree, where you hide your real opinions to avoid conflict or rejection, you have revealed the silence that is killing your authenticity. You have spent your life monitoring every word before it leaves your mouth, filtering your thoughts through the question, will this upset anyone, and choosing silence over honesty whenever the truth feels dangerous. You tell yourself this is kindness, this is maturity, this is choosing your battles, but what it actually is self-betrayal. And every time you swallow your truth to keep someone else comfortable, you are teaching yourself that your perspective does not matter, that your thoughts are not valuable, that who you actually are is less important than who others need you to be. If you keep the silence of truth, you are not preserving relationships. You are eroding yourself. And the cost is higher than you want to admit. You learned this silence early, and you learned it well. Maybe you grew up in a family where disagreement was dangerous, where expressing a different opinion led to punishment, rage, or the silent treatment. Maybe you watched a parent get attacked for speaking truth, and you decided that silence was safer than honesty. Or maybe you spoke your truth once, as a child, and experienced devastating consequences. Rejection. Abandonment. Being told you were wrong, bad, ungrateful, and you concluded that your truth is not welcome in the world, that to be loved, to be safe, to belong, you must agree, you must go along, you must keep your real thoughts locked inside where they cannot threaten anyone. So you became a mirror, reflecting back whatever people wanted to hear, adapting your opinions to match the room, performing agreement while your real perspective suffocated inside you. In Jungian terms, this is the complete domination of the persona over the self. The persona is the mask we wear, the socially acceptable version we present to the world. But when the persona becomes so powerful that we lose access to our authentic thoughts and opinions, we stop being real people and become performances. If you keep the silence of truth, you no longer know what you actually think about most things. You have trained yourself so thoroughly to consider what others want to hear that you have lost access to your own perspective. Someone asks your opinion and you freeze. Not because you do not have one, but because you do not know which one is safe to express. Someone asks where you want to eat and you say, I do not care, not because you truly do not care, but because expressing preference feels vulnerable and disagreement feels dangerous. The silence of truth creates a specific kind of suffering. You feel invisible, unheard. Like you are living behind glass where you can see and hear everyone but they cannot truly see or hear you. You have friends, but they do not really know you. You have a partner, but you cannot tell them what you truly think about significant issues. You have colleagues, but you never voice disagreement even when you see problems clearly. And this creates profound loneliness. Because connection requires being known, and being known requires speaking truth. But you cannot speak truth because you have decided that your truth is not acceptable, that it will cause conflict, that it will make people uncomfortable, that it will reveal you as difficult, opinionated, too much. So you keep silent. And the silence protects you from rejection, but it also protects you from connection, from intimacy, from ever being truly seen or loved for who you actually are. People who keep the silence of truth often attract relationships with people who dominate conversations, make all decisions, and never ask what they think. This is not accident. This is the unconscious seeking what it expects. You believe your truth does not matter. So you attract people who confirm that belief by never asking for it. Or you attract conflict-avoidant people who also keep the silence of truth, creating relationships where nothing real is ever discussed, where both people perform agreement while feeling profoundly alone. Either way, the pattern reinforces itself. The more you silence your truth, the more the world treats your truth as irrelevant, and the more your truth is treated as irrelevant, the more you believe it is not worth speaking. But here is what you do not see. Your silence is not kindness. It is not maturity. It is not wisdom, it is cowardice dressed in virtue. Every time you agree when you disagree, every time you stay silent when you have something to say, every time you protect someone from your perspective because you fear their reaction, you are teaching them that you are someone whose truth does not matter, and then you resent them for treating you that way. But they are not doing it to you. You are doing it to yourself, and you are using them as the excuse. The silence of truth is killing the person you actually are, the person with thoughts, perspectives, opinions that matter, the person who sees things others do not see and has something valuable to contribute. That person is suffocating, and they will keep suffocating until you finally, courageously let them speak. Even if your voice shakes, even if people disagree, even if speaking your truth costs you relationships built on your silence. Because relationships built on your silence are not real anyway. They are relationships with your persona, with your performance, not with you. If this revealed your silence, subscribe to learn how to reclaim your voice. Comment which silence is killing you. Your honesty might give someone else permission to finally speak. If your heart recognized the silence of pain, the pattern where you cannot express what hurts, where you hide your suffering behind a smile, where you pretend you are fine when you are breaking inside, you have revealed the silence that is killing your emotional health and your body. You have spent your life believing that pain is private, that struggle is shameful, that expressing how much you are hurting makes you weak, dramatic, or a burden. So you learned to suffer in silence, to cry alone, to handle your darkest moments without reaching out, to show up to work, to relationships, to life with a mask of okay plastered over a reality of agony. And you tell yourself, this is strength, this is resilience, this is not bothering others with your problems, but what it actually is emotional imprisonment. And every time you hide your pain, every time you pretend you are fine when you are falling apart, you are teaching yourself that your suffering does not deserve witness, that your struggles do not deserve support, that you must handle everything alone because needing help means failure. You learned this silence through trauma, through abandonment, through having your pain minimized or rejected when you tried to express it. Maybe you cried as a child and were told to stop being so sensitive, so dramatic, so weak. Maybe you shared your hurt with someone you trusted and they used it against you, weaponized your vulnerability, or simply could not handle it and withdrew. Maybe you grew up in an environment where pain was everywhere, and you learned that yours was not special, not worthy of attention, not as important as everyone else's. Or maybe you experienced something devastating, and when you tried to talk about it, people changed the subject, told you to move on, or looked so uncomfortable that you decided never to burden anyone with your truth again. So, you learned to silence your pain, to push it down, to perform okay, and it worked. People believed you were fine, they praised your strength, they had no idea you were dying inside. And you called that strength when it was actually abandonment, self-abandonment, the worst kind. In Jungian psychology, this is the shadow of grief, the part of the psyche that carries unprocessed sorrow, trauma, loss, and has no outlet for expression. If you keep the silence of pain, you are creating what Jung called a complex, a pocket of psychic energy that becomes autonomous, that lives in your unconscious, that influences your behavior without your awareness. This complex shows up as depression you cannot explain because the pain was never processed, as anxiety you cannot trace because the fear was never expressed, as physical illness that has no medical cause because the body is holding what the voice refused to release, chronic pain, autoimmune disease, migraines, digestive issues, fatigue. These are not random, these are your body screaming what you will not say. Your pain will speak, either through your voice or through your body, but it will speak. The silence of pain creates a devastating isolation. You are surrounded by people, but no one knows you are suffering. You show up, you function, you smile, and inside you are drowning. But no one knows to throw you a rope, because you trained them to believe you are fine. You have friends, but you do not tell them what you are going through. You have a partner, but you hide your darkest moments from them. You have family, but they think you are the strong one who never struggles. And this creates a loneliness more profound than being alone. You are lonely in connection, invisible in plain sight, drowning while everyone thinks you are swimming, and the worst part is that you are doing this to yourself. People would show up for you if you let them. People would hold space for your pain if you shared it. But you do not share it. You protect them from it. You convince yourself that your pain is too much, too heavy, too dark, that expressing it makes you a burden. So you suffer alone, and the aloneness multiplies the suffering. People who keep the silence of pain often end up in one of two relationship patterns. Either they attract people who are perpetually in crisis, so they can care for someone else's pain instead of acknowledging their own. This gives them purpose, makes them feel valuable, and allows them to avoid their own suffering by focusing on someone else's. Or they attract people who are emotionally unavailable or oblivious, who will never ask how they are really doing, which feels safe because they will never have to answer honestly. Either way, their pain remains unwitnessed, not because no one cares, but because they never show it. Because showing it requires trusting that someone can handle it, and they do not trust that. They have evidence from their past that pain is not welcome. That expressing it leads to rejection, minimization, or abandonment, so they keep it locked inside where it cannot hurt anyone, except it does hurt someone. It hurts them. Profoundly, constantly, slowly killing them from the inside. The work here is terrifying because it requires doing the thing you have decided is most dangerous. You must speak your pain. You must stop pretending you are okay when you are not. You must reach out when you are struggling instead of waiting until you are fine again. You must let someone see you broken instead of only showing them your put-together self. Start small with someone safe, someone who has earned your trust, and tell them the truth. I am not okay. I am really struggling. I need support. Do not minimize it. Do not follow it immediately with, "But I will be fine." Just let the pain exist in the space between you, and see what happens. Most likely they will not run. They will not judge you. They will move closer. Because pain shared is pain diminished, and pain hidden is pain amplified. The silence of pain is killing you, not the pain itself, the silence, and the only cure is voice. If your spirit recognizes the silence of boundaries, the pattern where you cannot say no, cannot speak up when your limits are violated, cannot defend yourself when you are being mistreated, you have revealed the silence that is killing your sense of self. You have spent your life allowing people to cross lines you never drew, to take more than you wanted to give, to treat you in ways that do not honor your worth, because somewhere along the way you learned that having boundaries makes you difficult, selfish, or unloving. So you became boundaryless. You said yes when you meant no. You tolerated behavior that violated you. You let people take and take and take while you gave and gave and gave, telling yourself this is what it means to be kind, to be loving, to be a good person. But it is not. It is what it means to be self-abandoning. And every time you stay silent when a boundary is crossed, every time you allow treatment you know is wrong, every time you say yes when every cell in your body is screaming no, you are teaching the world that you do not matter, that your limits do not exist, that you are available for whatever anyone needs regardless of the cost to yourself. You learned this silence through conditioning that taught you that your needs are secondary. Your limits are negotiable. Your comfort is less important than everyone else's. Maybe you had a parent who could not handle being told no, who raged or withdrew when you tried to assert yourself, so you learned that boundaries mean abandonment. Maybe you grew up in a family where your personal space, your time, your body, your possessions were not respected, and you internalized that you are not entitled to limits. Maybe you were praised for being easygoing, flexible, accommodating, and punished for being difficult, demanding, or assertive. So you learned that love is contingent on having no boundaries. Or maybe you experienced violation, abuse, or trauma where your boundaries were destroyed, and you concluded that boundaries do not protect you anyway, so why bother having them? So you stopped having them. You became permeable, a person with no limits, and people treated you accordingly. They took what you allowed them to take, and you called it your fault for allowing it while never addressing the deeper issue that you were never taught you had the right to stop them. In Jungian terms, this is the absence of the protective king or queen archetype, the part of the psyche that is meant to guard your kingdom, to protect your resources, to defend your territory. If you keep the silence of boundaries, this archetype is in shadow. You have no internal guardian, no voice that says this is too much or this is not acceptable or you need to leave. You override every internal signal telling you that something is wrong. You ignore the tightness in your chest when someone asks for more than you can give. You dismiss the dread you feel when you have to see someone who consistently disrespects you. You talk yourself out of every boundary before you speak it, convincing yourself that you are being too sensitive, too rigid, too selfish. And meanwhile, you are being drained, used, violated, and you are allowing it. Not because you are weak, but because you were never taught that you are allowed to stop it. The silence of boundaries creates a life where you feel perpetually invaded, resentful, and exhausted. You say yes to commitments you do not want. You tolerate behavior from friends, partners, family that leaves you feeling disrespected. You let people interrupt you, talk over you, dismiss you. You allow your time to be taken, your energy to be drained, your space to be invaded, and then you feel angry. But the anger has nowhere to go because you never spoke up. So it turns inward. You blame yourself for being too accommodating, too nice, too weak, or it leaks out passive-aggressively in sarcasm, withdrawal, or sabotage. Either way, the boundary was never set, the violation was never addressed, and the pattern repeats. You attract takers because you present yourself as someone with infinite capacity. You stay in relationships where you are consistently disrespected because you never defend yourself. You feel used because you never say no. And you resent people for doing what you trained them to believe was acceptable. People who keep the silence of boundaries often end up in relationships that are profoundly one-sided. They give endlessly while receiving little. They accommodate constantly while their needs are ignored. They adjust their entire life around someone else's preferences while their own preferences are never considered. And they stay in these relationships year after year, suffering in silence, hoping the other person will magically start respecting boundaries that were never established. But people cannot respect boundaries they do not know exist. And if you never say no, people assume your yes is genuine. If you never speak up when violated, people assume you are okay with it. If you never defend yourself, people assume you do not mind being treated that way. You are training the world how to treat you through your silence, and the world is learning that you are someone who can be taken advantage of, not because you are worthless, but because you act like you are. The work here is revolutionary and uncomfortable. You must learn to speak boundaries when every conditioning in your body tells you that boundaries mean conflict, rejection, or being labeled difficult. Start with one boundary, one no, one moment of defending yourself. And when guilt floods in, when the voice says you are being selfish, when you panic that people will leave, recognize that these are the internalized beliefs that installed the silence in the first place. They are not truth. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It is self-respect. Saying no is not mean, it is honest. Defending yourself is not aggressive, it is necessary. The silence of boundaries is killing the part of you that knows your worth, that knows you deserve respect, that knows you matter as much as anyone else. Speak the boundary, even if your voice shakes, even if they react badly, even if it cost you relationships with people who only valued you because you had no limits. Those relationships were not real anyway. They were built on your self-betrayal, and it is time to stop betraying yourself. If your soul recognized the silence of desire, the pattern where you cannot ask for what you want, cannot pursue what calls to you, cannot claim what you need because wanting feels shameful or dangerous, you have revealed the silence that is killing your potential and your joy. You have spent your life suppressing desire, telling yourself you do not really want that job, that relationship, that life, because wanting it means risking disappointment, rejection, or discovering that you do not deserve it. So you learned to want nothing, to desire nothing, to need nothing. And you told yourself this is wisdom, this is protecting yourself, this is not being greedy, selfish, or entitled. But what it actually is preemptive abandonment of yourself. You are rejecting your desires before anyone else can. You are denying yourself before life can. You are ensuring you never feel the pain of wanting something and not getting it by simply not allowing yourself to want it in the first place. And this silence, this refusal to acknowledge what calls to your soul, is not protecting you, it is killing you slowly, quietly, turning you into someone who drifts through life, waiting to want something, but never allowing yourself the vulnerability of admitting what that is. You learned this silence through experiences that taught you that desire is dangerous. Maybe you wanted something desperately as a child and did not get it, and the disappointment was so crushing that you decided never to want anything that much again. Maybe you expressed a desire and were shamed for it, told it was too much, too expensive, too selfish, too unrealistic. Maybe you pursued something you wanted and failed, and the failure felt like evidence that you should not have tried, should not have wanted, should not have risked. Or maybe you grew up in scarcity, where resources were limited and wanting anything meant taking from someone else, so you learned that your desires are a burden, that asking for what you want is selfish, that pursuing what calls to you is greedy, so you stopped wanting. You convinced yourself that you are low maintenance, easy to please, content with little, but you are not content, you are resigned, and resignation is not the same as peace. In Jungian psychology, this is the death of the inner child's natural desire and curiosity. Jung taught that the child archetype represents our capacity for wonder, for wanting, for pursuing what brings us joy without needing to justify it. If you keep the silence of desire, you have killed this archetype. You have become an adult who exists but does not truly live, who functions but does not thrive, who goes through motions but never feels fully alive because nothing you do is connected to genuine desire. You chose your career based on what was practical, not what you wanted. You entered your relationship based on who was available, not who you desired. You live in a city based on where you ended up, not where you want to be. And now you are numb, going through a life that belongs to no one, because it was never built on what you actually wanted. It was built on what you thought you should want, on what was safe, on what would not disappoint you, because you never wanted it anyway. The silence of desire creates a life that feels like sleepwalking. You are technically alive, but nothing excites you, nothing calls to you, nothing makes your heart race. You look at your life and feel nothing, not gratitude, not satisfaction, just blankness, because none of it is yours. None of it came from desire, it all came from should, from safety, from fear, and a life built on fear of desire is a life half-lived. You watch other people pursue what they want, and you feel a strange mixture of envy and judgment. Part of you wishes you could do that, part of you thinks they are being reckless, entitled, selfish. But really, what you are feeling is grief. Grief for the desires you never let yourself pursue. Grief for the life you never let yourself want. Grief for the person you could have been if you had been brave enough to claim what called to you instead of silencing it before it could disappoint you. People who keep the silence of desire often live lives that look responsible and acceptable from the outside, but feel empty on the inside. They have the stable job they do not love, the safe relationship that does not excite them, the life that meets all practical requirements but feeds none of their soul. And they tell themselves this is maturity, this is being realistic, this is accepting reality instead of chasing fantasies. But desire is not fantasy. Desire is the soul's compass. It points you toward what you are meant to pursue, and when you silence it, when you refuse to let it guide you, you end up lost. Not dramatically lost, quietly lost, living a life that was never meant for you. And wondering why you feel so empty when you did everything right. You did everything right according to external standards, but you betrayed every internal desire, and that betrayal creates a specific kind of death, not physical death, but the death of aliveness, the death of wanting, the death of joy. The work here is allowing yourself to want again, and this is terrifying because wanting means risking disappointment, risking failure. Risking discovering that what you want is not possible, or that you are not capable of getting it. But here is what you must understand. The risk of disappointment is nothing compared to the certainty of regret. If you never pursue what you want, you guarantee a life of wondering what if. What if I had tried? What if I had asked? What if I had pursued that? Those questions haunt. They create the specific hell of the unlived life. So start small. Admit one desire. One thing you want but have been afraid to claim. Write it down. Say it out loud. Let it exist. And then take one step toward it. Not a giant leap. Just one step. And see what happens. You might fail. You might be disappointed. But you also might discover that the desire was not foolish. That pursuing it did not destroy you. That wanting something and going after it is not selfish, it is human, and you are allowed to be human. You are allowed to want. You are allowed to desire. You are allowed to pursue what calls to you. The silence of desire is killing the person you could be, and it is time to let that person finally, courageously, live. Now that you have seen which silence is killing you, now that you understand that what you refuse to speak is destroying you from the inside. It is time to face what Carl Jung discovered that changes everything about psychological health and authentic living. Silence is not neutral. It is not safe. It is not wise. Silence is violence. Violence against the self. Every word you swallow, every truth you hide, every emotion you suppress, every boundary you do not speak, every desire you deny, it does not disappear. It goes into your body, into your shadow, into your unconscious where it creates symptoms, sabotages relationships, and slowly kills who you actually are. Jung spent his life proving that the unlived life, the unexpressed truth, the unspoken word, these are not small things. They are the material of neurosis, of depression, of physical illness, of the profound suffering of people who look fine on the outside while dying on the inside. Jung taught that the psyche has a drive toward wholeness, toward expressing everything it contains. When we block that expression, when we keep silence where there should be voice, we create what he called a split. The conscious self that performs, that is acceptable, that keeps everyone comfortable, and the shadow self that holds everything real, everything true, everything that was too dangerous to speak. This split is not sustainable. Eventually, the shadow demands expression, and if it cannot speak through your voice, it will speak through your body, through illness, through accident, through self-sabotage, through the relationships you destroy and the opportunities you miss and the life you cannot seem to live, no matter how hard you try. Because you cannot live fully while silencing fundamentally. You cannot be whole while hiding essentially. You cannot thrive while suppressing authentically. This is why breaking the silence is not optional for psychological health. It is essential. The silence of truth must be broken by speaking what you actually think, even when it creates conflict. The silence of pain must be broken by expressing what you actually feel, even when it makes you vulnerable. The silence of boundaries must be broken by defending what you actually need, even when it makes others uncomfortable. The silence of desire must be broken by pursuing what you actually want, even when it risks disappointment. These are not optional extras for people who want to live extraordinarily. These are baseline requirements for people who want to live at all, because living is not the same as existing. And you have been existing in silence for so long that you have forgotten what living with voice feels like. But here is what makes breaking the silence so difficult. You installed these silences for a reason. They protected you once. The silence of truth protected you from conflict. The silence of pain protected you from being a burden. The silence of boundaries protected you from rejection. The silence of desire protected you from disappointment. And in the moment these silences were installed, they were adaptive. They were survival strategies. They kept you safe in environments where voice was dangerous. But what protected you then is destroying you now, because you are no longer that child in that dangerous environment. You are an adult, with choice, with agency, with the capacity to speak even when it is uncomfortable. And you are still operating under the assumption that voice is dangerous, when what is actually dangerous is continued silence. Jung believed that neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering, that we create symptoms to avoid the pain of facing what we refuse to face. The silence you keep is creating symptoms. The depression you cannot explain is unexpressed pain. The anxiety you cannot trace is unspoken truth. The chronic illness you cannot cure is the body holding what the voice refuses to release. The relationships that keep failing are built on silence instead of honesty. The career that feels meaningless is built on should instead of desire. The life that feels empty is built on silence instead of authentic expression. And the only cure is voice, not someday, not when it is safe, not when you feel ready, now, messy, imperfect, terrifying, but now. The path of individuation that Jung described, the journey of becoming fully yourself, requires integrating everything you have split off. And voice is the tool of integration. Speaking truth integrates the split between what you think and what you say. Speaking pain integrates the split between what you feel and what you show. Speaking boundaries integrates the split between what you need and what you tolerate. Speaking desire integrates the split between what you want and what you pursue. Each act of voice is an act of integration, of becoming whole, of refusing to live split. And each continued silence is a reinforcement of the split, of the lie, of the slow death of authenticity. So the question is not whether breaking the silence will be comfortable. It will not. The question is whether you are willing to prioritize aliveness over comfort. truth over acceptance, authenticity over performance, wholeness over silence, because you cannot have both. You cannot keep the peace and speak the truth. You cannot avoid conflict and set boundaries. You cannot protect others from your pain and be emotionally honest. You cannot stay safe from disappointment and pursue desire. You have to choose. And every day you continue to choose silence, you are choosing death, slow death, quiet death, the death of who you actually are in favor of who you think you should be. And that death is not dramatic. It is not even noticeable from the outside. But from the inside it is unbearable. And it is time to stop bearing it. It is time to speak. So now you know which silence is killing you. You understand that what you refuse to speak is destroying you from within. But awareness is not transformation. Understanding is not healing. Breaking the silence requires action. Daily, uncomfortable, revolutionary action. You must practice voice when everything in you has been trained towards silence. This is not easy. This is not quick. This will activate every fear, every defense, every belief that installed the silence in the first place. But it is the only path to reclaiming who you actually are, to living instead of existing, to finally breathing after decades of suffocating. Here is how you begin. If you keep the silence of truth, your practice is speaking one honest thought per day. Start small, start safe, with someone who has earned your trust, and say one thing you actually think that you would normally keep silent. This does not mean being cruel or dumping every opinion without filter. It means being honest. It means when someone asks what you think, you tell them, even if it differs from their opinion, even if it creates tension, even if they react badly. Start with low-stakes truths. Actually, I did not like that movie. I disagree with that approach. I see it differently. And notice what happens in your body when you speak honestly. Notice the fear, the panic, the urge to take it back, to soften it, to agree instead. That is the silence trying to protect you. Your work is to breathe through the discomfort and let the truth stand. Do not apologize for having a different perspective. Do not immediately qualify it. Just speak it and let it exist in the space between you. And watch what happens. Most people will not reject you. They will engage. They will respect you more, because honesty creates intimacy that performance never can. If you keep the silence of pain, your practice is naming one struggle per week. Stop pretending you are fine when you are not. Stop performing okay when you are breaking. Choose one person you trust and tell them the truth. I am really struggling right now. I am not okay. I need support. Do not minimize it. Do not follow it immediately with reassurance that you will be fine. Just let the pain exist between you. Let yourself be seen as not okay. And notice what happens. Notice if the world ends or if maybe connection deepens. Notice if they leave or if maybe they move closer. Most people want to show up for you, but they cannot show up if you do not let them know you need them. Your pain deserves witness. Your suffering deserves support. And expressing it is not weakness, it is trust. Trust that your pain is valid. Trust that you deserve help. Trust that you do not have to carry everything alone. If you keep the silence of boundaries, your practice is saying no once per day. This will feel impossible at first. You have spent your life saying yes when you meant no. Now you must practice the opposite. Start with small no's. No, I cannot take that on. No, that does not work for me. No, I need to leave now. Do not explain. Do not justify. Do not apologize. Just no. And when guilt floods in, when the voice says you are being selfish, when you panic that people will be angry, recognize that these are the beliefs that created the silence. They are not truth. You are allowed to have limits. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to say no without guilt. Practice this daily, in small ways and big ways, and watch what happens. Some people will respect your no. They will appreciate your clarity. They will adjust. Those are your people. Some people will push back. They will guilt you. They will act like your boundary is a personal attack. Those are not your people. Those are people who valued you for your lack of boundaries, and you do not need them. You need to respect yourself more than you need their approval. The silence of boundaries dies when you finally speak the no you have been swallowing, and your self-respect is born. If you keep the silence of desire, your practice is admitting one want per day. Stop acting like you are low maintenance and easy to please when you have actual preferences and desires. Start expressing them. I want Thai food tonight. I want to see that movie. I want to pursue that opportunity. Do not minimize your want. Do not present it as a suggestion that you do not really care about. Present it as a genuine desire, and let it exist. You are allowed to want things. You are allowed to have preferences. You are allowed to pursue what calls to you. And when fear floods in, when the voice says you are being high maintenance or entitled, recognize that this is the internalized belief that silenced desire in the first place. It is not truth. Wanting is not greedy. Pursuing desire is not selfish. Admitting what calls to you is not foolish. It is human, and you are allowed to be human. For all silences, there is one universal practice that changes everything. Before you speak, pause. Feel the silence trying to take over. Feel the urge to swallow the words, to keep quiet, to protect others from your reality, and then consciously choose differently. Speak anyway, not because it is comfortable, but because silence is killing you, and voice is the only path to life. The silence you keep is not protecting anyone. It is destroying you, and breaking it is not optional. It is essential, not someday, today, not perfectly, messily, but now. Because the person you actually are is suffocating under the weight of everything you refuse to say. And it is time to finally let that person breathe. You have walked through something today that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You looked directly at the silence that is killing you and saw it not as protection but as slow death. The silence of truth killing your authenticity. The silence of pain killing your emotional health. The silence of boundaries killing your sense of self. The silence of desire killing your potential and joy. Each one installed for a reason that made sense at the time. Each one kept you safe in moments when voice was genuinely dangerous. But what protected you then is destroying you now. And you cannot afford to keep it one more day. Because every day you continue to swallow what needs to be said, you are choosing death over life, silence over voice, performance over authenticity. And that choice is costing you everything that matters. Carl Jung spent his life proving that psychological health is not about being comfortable. It is about being real, and being real requires voice. Requires speaking what is true, even when it is uncomfortable. Requires expressing what hurts, even when it makes you vulnerable. Requires defending what you need, even when it creates conflict. Requires pursuing what you want, even when it risks disappointment. These are not optional extras for people who want extraordinary lives. These are baseline requirements for people who want to live at all, because living is not the same as existing. Living requires voice, and you have been existing in silence for so long that you have forgotten what it feels like to truly live, to speak freely, to express honestly, to exist without constantly monitoring and filtering and performing. That freedom is available, but only on the other side of breaking the silence. The silence you keep is not protecting anyone. It is not keeping the peace. It is not being kind. It is not mature or wise or noble. It is killing you slowly, quietly, in ways that do not show up on the outside but devastate on the inside. The depression you cannot explain, the anxiety you cannot trace, the physical symptoms that have no medical cause, the relationships that feel empty, the career that feels meaningless, the life that feels like sleepwalking. These are not random. These are the symptoms of silence, of words unspoken, of truths hidden, of pain suppressed, of boundaries violated, of desires denied, and the only cure is voice, messy, imperfect, uncomfortable, but voice. Jung taught that the second half of life is for reclaiming what was lost in the first half, for integrating what was split, for speaking what was silenced. If you are reading this, if you recognized yourself in one of these silences, you are being called to that work. You are being invited to stop performing and start living, to stop silencing and start speaking, to stop protecting others from your reality and start honoring yourself by expressing it. This will not be comfortable. People will be surprised. Some will be upset. Some will try to reinstate the silence by making you feel guilty for breaking it. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort with your voice is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to stop killing yourself through silence, and that starts today. Which silence is killing you? Truth, pain, boundaries, desire? And will you continue to keep it? Continue to swallow what needs to be said? Continue to choose slow death over uncomfortable life? Or will you finally, courageously break the silence? Will you speak the truth you have been hiding? Will you express the pain you have been suppressing? Will you defend the boundaries you have been violating? Will you pursue the desires you have been denying? Share which silence you recognized in the comments. Your honesty might give someone else permission to break their own silence. Subscribe for more on voice, authenticity, and the courage to live instead of exist. 2 more videos are appearing now. Choose one to continue. Until we meet again, remember this. The silence you keep is not noble. It is not kind. It is not wise. It is killing who you really are, and breaking it is not optional. It is essential. Not someday when you feel ready. Today. Not perfectly when you know exactly what to say. Messily with shaking voice, with fear flooding your system. But today, because the person you actually are is suffocating under the weight of everything you refuse to speak, and every day you continue to keep silent is a day you choose their death. Their slow, quiet, devastating death. You have kept silent long enough. You have protected everyone else long enough. You have performed acceptable long enough. Now it is time to speak, to break the silence that is killing you, to reclaim your voice, to live, finally, fully, authentically, with voice, even if it shakes, even if it costs you, even if breaking the silence destroys the life built on silence, because that life was never real anyway. It was a performance, and you are done performing. You are ready to live. And living begins with voice, with breaking the silence, with speaking what has been suffocating inside you. So speak, today, now. Before the silence kills what is left of who you really are.